My question is that I don't know if a lot of people know that in California, the only county that has city and county as one is San Francisco. And consequently, we virtually never see the mayor. He is only formally there once a month with a prepared question and speech. So would you be willing to work on changing that so that actually he is a part, or she, and would you be willing to work on changing that so that we stop having this shadow government where all of the big business meet with the mayor, and if the Board of Supervisors has his majority, we're disempowered. So thank you.
I've actually got an idea for that. I was thinking about this the other day. Using the internet as a powerful tool, I would be interested in having it that so every meeting is live streamed. So it's purely clear, and even have a professional legal advisor okay, this is what you. So is that thing that they just asked me legal or not? Right. That way you stay out of trouble. You keep shit on the up and up, and anybody who wants to watch every meeting that you have, it's open doors through the internet.
Yeah, I like that idea as well, and I love the idea of actually having dialogue with the people at the Board of Supervisors rather than these pre-scripted questions and answers that get put out there. And yeah, I do wonder, when do we get access to Ed Lee? I actually got to meet him twice over the last 2 months. The first question I asked him, it was at National Night Out at Ella Hill Hutch about a month and a half ago. And my first question to him was, do you support Jane Kim's Eviction Protection Act? And his answer was to dodge it. And he said, did she finish writing that yet? And I said, she turned it into the land use committee a week and a half ago. And the two neighbors that were standing behind me when he drove off in his car, they said, he just dodged that question. And I said, we're used to that, aren't we? And then I got to meet him again about a week and a half ago. It was at the second big rally where neighbors took over City Hall. And he happened to be outside when I was going to get my bike. And I went right up to him and shook his hand again. And I said, Mayor Lee, have you had a chance to take a stance on Eviction Protection Act? And this time his response was, well, we're waiting to see if we can get sued. Wow. And he was the guy, remember, and Magic, you love to talk about this. David Talbot wrote about this in Season of the Witch, where he said, I take pride in the fact that I could stop an eviction and draw it out for over a year if I wanted to. And here he is waiting. And so he's not only not leading on the issue, that he's actively campaigning on this issue. He's saying this is one of his number one issues in San Francisco, eviction protection. Not only is he not leading, he's not paying attention, he's standing on the sidelines. And then so I bypassed that and I said, well, what about a new idea where we could actually, it's very scary when people get a 3-day cure or quit notice or an eviction notice. It's very scary because it's your home. And all of a sudden you're being terrified because you might be out on the streets. And so what if we actually bulked up our services so that the clock didn't start ticking on that 3 days unless a mediator who's trained in tenant law was able to go to the home of the tenant and suss out, is this a real issue? Is it fraudulent? Is it real? Because, let's be real, for the landlord's sake, sometimes it is the tenant's fault. But we should put the support services on the side of the tenants because there is an eviction and displacement crisis, and this mayor is not treating it as such.
Hear, hear.
In fact, actually, if you look at statistics, the amount of Ellis Act evictions has been going down, and what's actually skyrocketing is gotcha evictions.
Exactly.
Where,
yeah, no.
Go ahead.
No, and it comes down to the dictatorial state that exists with the kind of power that the mayor has over the budget. So really, what needs to be created is really what are the areas that we have to give more power to the Board of Supervisors, and in a ways where we have more of a balanced sharing of power, checks and balances. Right now we have these last three mayors and presently Mayor Lee have allowed a group of investors to create a runaway housing market. And that needs to be stopped. It does not benefit us. And it's all done under this delusion of free market politics, what I call the the monopoly game of the Milton Bradley Friedman School of Politics and Economics, the monopoly. And so, but when monopolists get the privilege, in their mind, privilege becomes a right. So you have Prop F proponents yelling, it's not fair, it's too extreme. God, we're only asking that what New York already has, what other major cities in the United States already have, what Prop F is proposing, but they yell it's too extreme because they're used to the backroom deal with a mayor that behaves like a dictator, like good old King George. And so it's time to unseat good old King George again.
So, all right, I've got one write-in question, and then we'll go over to the next audience question. So this was sent from a District 4 voter. And the question is, Ed Lee states that when Super Bowl 50 is here, he will make sure there are no homeless people hanging around the Embarcadero where most of the action in the city will take place. Good luck. Since this will be a free event open to everyone, it will take some doing to accomplish this restriction. Do you think that this situation merits special attention, given that the powers that be have been unable to deal with it on a citywide basis for a couple of decades? And in that same vein, what are your plans and thoughts regarding the constant state of homelessness in the city?
Oh, I'd love to take that one. So, for better or for worse, Ed Lee has made the Super Bowl a catalyst for change for homelessness. And I came up with the idea of the St. Francis Super Bowl Homelessness Challenge. The St. Francis Super Bowl Homelessness Challenge. I just spoke, there was a Board of Supervisors hearing on the homelessness count recently, and I presented this idea to them. I went and talked with Jennifer Friedenbach, the executive director of the Coalition on Homelessness, about this, and I actually presented this to one of the policy directors of Google recently. We are the home of St. Francis. We are the home of Burning Man. We are the home of innovation. If we had, my proposition is this. There's a Cal Berkeley professor named Nicholas de Monchaux. I would ask everyone here to Google local code, and you can find out he indexed all of the underutilized city-owned properties in San Francisco from 2009 to 2011. He has a whole index and map of them. They're all over San Francisco. These are under freeways or in alleyways or small areas. And so what I'm calling for is to create transitional eco-villages where you have 10 to 20 people that get to set up not an encampment, but a transitional eco-village with actual beautiful structures where we're supporting the mental health and giving people the opportunity to grow things as well. And so this would actually be a job creator for people who are underemployed, who have mental health training, as well as people who have gone through our permaculture courses in San Francisco, because we have a couple of really wonderful ones. And so if we had $5 million, which is probably what they're going to spend to push people out, but if we were able to use the Super Bowl as a catalyst to work together as a city and bring in Burning Man, I'm going to be talking to someone from Burning Man soon, and I know a couple camps that are interested in this, because what better place with the resources that people go out to the playa and create these beautiful structures. And there's someone who priced these domes that are $600, and they take 2 hours to construct. They're personal living domes. And they have solar power, and they have a window and a locking door, $600. So if we had a couple $1 million, we could get, a couple thousand of these and get started, but it has to have an infrastructural support. I would love to take this project on, regardless of whether or not I become mayor. The St. Francis Super Bowl Homelessness Challenge. Spread the word.
There are many programs that the Coalition on Homelessness, the San Francisco Tenants Union, the Department of Public Health, the Department of Mental Health Services are working tirelessly to respond to people who find themselves without a house. The Poor Magazine Homefulness Project has created tremendous projects. What is not happening here is the political will or the political care from the City Hall administration to fund these programs. That's what needs to happen.
Time for a change.
When I read that Ed Lee said that, I just thought, what a dumb motherfucker. Like, are you kidding me? Like if this was like, if Mark Leno or Tom Amiano was in the race, he wouldn't have done that. It's just this arrogance is permeating the whole thing, where it's just like, really, it's one of the most glaring issues we have in San Francisco, and your solution is just push them under the carpet. Just push them out of the way. And so I think that if Amy's plan isn't, if they're not able to get their shit together and do that, I think us as citizens should do something, at least symbolically. I'm in the process of putting out my bit of the platform about homelessness. I'm doing a lot of research right now, and 70% of the homeless in San Francisco had San Francisco addresses before they were homeless. So these are our people. These are San Franciscans. So I say that if they continue to say we're going to push these people out just for the fucking Super Bowl, we all are going to be out there, be like we're all homeless that day. We're all homeless those days. We're all in solidarity, being like you can't kick us all out of here.
Yeah, for people who have actually worked in this area of people without a house, it's a long road to homelessness. It's a very long road to homelessness.
Thank you for your thoughtful responses, and I'm sure the write-in voter is very pleased to have your responses. Thank you. And now back to our audience. We've got another member over at the public mic.
Hey, my name is Josh Wolf, and in disclosure, I've helped with both Francisco's campaign and Amy's a bit, so I wanted to be sure people know that. And part of what I worked with Amy's campaign was exploring Democracy OS, and it seemed like bringing direct democracy into San Francisco would be a powerful tool. However, last night when I came across a story about Macopan Plaza, which is sort of similar to this previous question with pushing the homeless out for the Super Bowl, I read quite dishearteningly that Jane Kim herself, Supervisor Jane Kim herself, has acknowledged that there should be a fence put around this open plaza over by 14th and Market, because that is what the residents nearby want. And so not only is the city changing in both physical ways and all sorts of business ways, but the people and what they value are changing. And I'm no longer confident that a majority of the people of this city actually embrace what we think of as San Francisco values. So what can be done to sort of reverse that shift and take the new people coming? I know Stuart talked about this a little bit with his meetings at the start, but what can be done to sort of embrace our new inhabitants and sort of help with a paradigm shift so that we continue to invoke those San Francisco values and hold them dear? Thanks.
I said this earlier when we were in there, but I'm looking at this entire campaign for running for mayor as one giant media campaign, because it's a way you can influence people's thoughts by getting to them through their funny bones and whatnot. And so I'm really, like I said, trying to get into these offices to talk to people. But I think, with Dolores Park, we've had a problem with Dolores Park where it's like, people trashing it. So I wanted to start a campaign that said, don't be a fucking asshole in Dolores Park. Seriously. Talk to them how they understand it. Don't be an asshole. Clean your shit up. And I think that there's a way that you don't have to use foul language all the time like I do. But I think that there's a similar campaign that can be done with how to be a San Franciscan, how to be part of the community. And we can do a campaign, whether it's fucking bombing stickers around town, or getting a billboard or doing something, or just doing an email thing. But we have to get people to care about being here. And I think that we have to use the means of production that these people are using as well. So.
Yeah, we have to be here now. Live here, love here, vote here, add to the culture of the place that you're at. One of the things that really influenced me in getting a sense of the place that I moved into when I moved into my neighborhood that was north of the Panhandle near Divisadero is I decided to do a research project about my neighborhood. And so I would like to see more of that kind of educational but fun and engaging history projects where people, when people are moving into places learn about the history of where you're at. And so when I learned about my history, I learned that it was neighbors who really pushed for the Panhandle not to have a freeway over it, because that almost happened. But it was tens of thousands of neighbors that pushed against that. And that was a 6-5 vote at the Board of Supervisors. We almost had a freeway over the Panhandle, and then to learn about the Harlem of the West, era of the Western Addition and the African American community that moved in. And unfortunately, there was a displacement of Japanese Americans during World War II, but African American community moved in to those empty spaces and built up a vibrant culture that was really the epicenter of culture in San Francisco for a while until it was destroyed through redevelopment. And so when you have the history of the place that you live, you actually start to feel like you're part of it, and you can point it out to people, and then you realize it's not just about learning history, it's about making history and realizing you're a part of it. So as mayor, I would be pushing for people to learn the history of this place that they've moved into and to feel like they're active participants in making history.
Yeah, I think for me it's especially because a lot of people from outside San Francisco listen to this wonderful program, Mutiny Radio. People can actually help us by identifying any friend that they have who lives in San Francisco and calling, I heard this program on the radio, and vote 1, 2, 3 to replace Ed Lee. And I think that's a very important piece, because what we need is our citizenry here who can register and vote. We have exactly a month left that people can register, and we've had too much of this attitude that who cares, it's not going to make a difference. It does make a difference. It's made a tremendous difference that only 130,000 people voted in the race of Avalos and Mr. Lee, and the difference is that we're all getting kicked out of here. So it does make a difference. If you do not participate, it makes a negative difference. If you participate, it makes a positive difference. And going to the piece that Josh was mentioning, where democracy or a larger majority have that participate and destroy the actual values of caring, of support, of breaking down neighborhood because people don't know each other anymore. I do think that there's enough programs. I go back to that piece. There's a lot of cultural program. There's a lot of neighborhood programming. There's a lot of neighbors that are out there. We don't have the political will from the leadership to fund those programs, to support those programs, to support these attitudes of neighborhood support. So what gets created is a cynicism, and what gets created is you bring all this new folks who don't care about San Francisco because they have no history here. So we do need to have a leadership at City Hall that has the political will to nourish the values of San Francisco.
Thank you. All right. And we just have about 5 more minutes. So a real quick question, one more quick question.
Okay, the boy Diamond Dave here, the co-host with Valerie of the show, which is coming up almost immediately, called the Common Thread Collective. In fact, a few musicians are here all the way from Chile. So hang on in, hang on out. What I see happening, you have it right, we cast that wide net. Find that common thread. Let life flourish and say, don't panic. Keep it organic. But also want to say the past shakes hands with the future to the now, right now. I also want to say, let's get on the same page, get out of the box they push us in, and put us in and push the envelope of social, cultural, and political change. I also want to say, here we be, as you see. This be our first forum in this hour. We be a voice of what's going on. Mutiny Radio, the Common Thread Collective. I want to thank you guys for coming. And what's coming at what we're thinking of the next forum. First, we've had a growing group of coalitions as we're here in the Mission and now citywide. If you're on the steps of City Hall, and I saw you there on the 10th, we have the Chinese the Chinese Progressive Association, many other coalitions coming from around the city. Now we have a group of propositions. I want to say this should be our next candidate, our next election forum of a group of propositions, and I want to invite you guys back. So glad you're here. Prop A, Prop D, Prop F, Prop I, which is a moratorium in the Mission, so many others. We want to be right here as a voice of what's going on, live and podcasted here. So I want to put that out there as our next step. We'll have the next election forum. We'll bring in those propositions that we need to get elected, that we need to get passed, so that to be part of this people's campaign. Do you agree?
I agree.
Sir. Yep. We've the way we're running this campaign is to to create a peoplescampaign.net that will continue after November 3rd. What we need to create is a citywide alliance of concerned neighbors that will make the difference in San Francisco, very similar to what Jesse Jackson did with the Rainbow Coalition, to create the reality that it's not just about electoral politics. That is the very least what it's actually about. It's about citizens, papers or no papers. I'm not talking about immigration status here. I'm talking about people who live in the city getting together across party lines, across sector lines, and that's why we have to come together to create a movement of people that will say, this is what this city is about. So,
Okay.
Community Congress is good. Community Planning Commission is also a very good step.
Can I mention one thing? SEIU 1021 represents the city workers, the educators, the nurses, the nonprofit workers. There are tens and tens of thousands of people in San Francisco. They have said no to Ed Lee, and they have said yes to Francisco and my campaign. And that is a huge thing, to have the workers of San Francisco saying that we don't want this incumbent mayor anymore.
Thank you. Again, you're listening to Women's Magazine on mutinyradio.fm. We've been talking with 3 mayoral candidates, Amy Farah Weiss, Francisco Herrera, and Stuart Schuffman. As we wrap up, could you kind of briefly let people know how they can find out more information about you and your campaigns for mayor of San Francisco? And any events that are coming up, feel free to make a quick announcement.
Sure. So my website is thinktwicevoteweiss.com. You can also go onto Facebook and look for Vote 123 to replace Ed Lee, and we'll be happy to add you to the group and keep you informed. I have an event that I'm putting together that I've invited Stuart and Francisco to, and I think Stuart can make it. I'm not sure about Francisco, on the 30th, which is Wednesday at El Rio. And there was just a powerful event last night around SOMA development. And at the end, the people started to do a filibuster, and they said, you know, who are you planning for? Who are you planning for? And so the name of this event at El Rio on the 30th is Who Are We Planning For? Yes on Prop I, yes on inclusive development. And we're going to talk about the policies and how we could move forward as a people to develop our city.
If you want to find out more about what I'm doing, you can go to brokeassmayor.com. Because I go by Brokeass Stuart. You can also follow me on Facebook, brokeassstuart.com. We're having a party tomorrow at El Rio. It's a fundraiser for myself and Tom Temprano. He's running for City College Board, and it's a joint fundraiser. And we have 5 or 6 bands and DJs, including John from Pansy Division is DJing, and it's just gonna be a really good time. And I'll just remember and spread the word. Vote 123 to replace Ed Lee.
Yeah. And for Francisco, you could come to my Facebook page, is Francisco Herrera for Mayor, Facebook, and internet, you could go to peoplescampaign.net. Peoplescampaign.net. Thank you.
Thank you. And before we wrap up, we're gonna end the show with Francisco. We're gonna play your campaign song. Right. So I wonder if you could kind of briefly introduce the campaign song that you have. It's the It's Gonna Take Us All, where you're singing with John Fromer in Spanish at the end. Play it? Yeah, we're gonna play it. Right. You want to talk? Just
well, no, it's very much exactly what all of us are talking about. We gotta look beyond our parochial, small community vision, and we are a beautiful city of communities, but we got to look beyond that. We really have to go across party lines. We got to cross sector lines. We got to cross ethnic and religious lines. We are the people of this city. The investors have one thing in mind, and this is what it is. They want to make Manhattan of the West out of San Francisco. Skyscrapers from downtown to Daly City, skyscrapers from downtown to Ocean Beach, and across all the way to San Francisco State. That is their plan, ladies and gentlemen. It is not regular politics. They are out to kick us out. So the only way we can hold this first step, we got to stop that Ed Lee administration, which has opened the doors to a runaway, irresponsible market that does not serve us. And number two, we got to look beyond our own small thinking. We got to really cross party lines and really create a people's campaign. No politics as usual.
Thank you for introducing the song we're going to hear next. So I want to thank everybody. Thank you for listening. Thank you for participating
Viva John Fromer.
in this Mayoral Candidate Forum. I'm Global Val, and I want to thank the candidates and the public for coming down to Mutiny Radio today, as well as my co-producer for the day's show, Roman Reimer, who interviewed the candidates today on his show, The Weekly Review, just before this one. So you'll be able to download the podcasts of this show, Women's Magazine with Global Val, Fridays 2 to 3 p.m., and also The Weekly Review with Roman, Fridays 12 to 2 p.m. on mutinyradio.fm. You had a quick thing?
And a shout out to Bill Morgan with Labor and Love on 10 a.m. on Saturday.
Yeah, Bill Morgan, he came through.
12 o'clock tomorrow, 24th and Mission. Speak out against Donald.
All right, yes. Well, we're going to be coming up next with the Common Thread Collective. Lots of time and opportunity to talk about what's happening in the neighborhood and around the city and around the planet. I'm Global Val, and remember, just when your aspirations seem outrageous, that inspiration is contagious. Peace, and thank you from San Francisco.